page 651.
Yes.
And yesterday we were discussing this para, but since the root of the difficulty, but we could not finish it. So today we will finish it. We'll read each sentence and see. And the basic idea is very clear. So we'll see what this is clear or not. So I'm starting. But since the root of the difficulty is a split, limited, and separative existence, this change must consist in an integration, a healing of the divided consciousness of our being. And since that division is complex and many-sided, no partial change on one side of the being can be passed off as a sufficient substitute for the integral transformation. So, big sentence, we'll go step by step. The root of the difficulty is split, limited, separative existence. We feel ourselves to be separate from everybody else. That is the crux of the ego. The ego, we know very well, is that which makes you feel separate from everybody else. We must not interpret the ego in the normal human way, which is, oh, he is very egoistic, he is very selfish, he is very dominating, he lords it over others. Not in that sense. In the spiritual sense, ego is that which makes you feel separate from everybody else. And all the consequences of that are the sense of superiority and the sense of selfishness and all that. That is the consequences. So this is the main problem. You feel yourself separate from everybody else. When does the separation go? When you can go to the cosmic consciousness and feel that you are part of everybody and everybody is part of you. As Sri Aurobindo says in his sonnet, to whichever person I turn, I see myself with another face. Okay? So it is, we must not think that the body-mind life, your body-mind life is the same as everybody else's body-mind life. It is essentially the soul. The soul, which is the essence of each soul, is the same. That's what you recognize when you go to the cosmic level. So, but you can't get the cosmic level unless you rise out of your outer nature. Okay, so, and then there's also another problem. There's an ego of the body, there's an ego of the vital, and there's an ego of the mind. Okay, then also there's another thing. Sat, Chit, Shakti, Ananda, all these are coming down into the physical world. When they are coming down, each one becomes limited. So there can be an ego of consciousness, there can be an ego of Ananda, there can be an ego of power. So it is so complex. That's exactly what he's saying. Okay. This change must consist in an integration, a healing of the divided consciousness of our being. And since this division is complex and many-sided, that's what it means. In the body-mind life, each one, there's an ego, separate ego. And there's also the various aspects, the consciousness aspect, the power aspect, okay, the Ananda aspect. All these also, the ego can operate in all these. Can be passed off. So none of them can be, you have to get rid of all these things together. That's what he's saying, integral transformation. Our first division is that created by our ego, and mainly, most forcefully, most vividly by our life ego, the ego in the vital, okay, so, which divides us from all other beings as not self. They are not part of us, they are different, they are other. Okay? So that is the first ego, the vital ego. It divides us from all others and ties us to our egocentricity and the law of an egoistic self-affirmation. First of all, you have the vital ego. It makes you feel separate from everybody else. And there is this self-affirmation which can cause you selfishness. It is in the errors of this self-affirmation that wrong and evil first arise. That he has already told us that the vitality is that which makes you feel the wrong action, evil, suffering, falsehood, all these things come up at that time. in the vital. Wrong consciousness engenders wrong will, naturally. You don't know what to do exactly, the wrong will in the members. In the members, that members is your body, your vital and your mind, your members. In the thinking mind, in the heart, in the life mind, and the sensational being. So, thinking mind is what Husserl calls the rational mind, okay? The objective mind. In the heart is the higher vital, okay? And then in the life mind, okay, the vital mind, that's a lower mind, okay? So, in the sensational being, even in your physical sensational, physical vital. Shyamna makes a difference even between physical vital and vital physical. There is a gradation. The physical vital is lower and the vital physical is slightly higher, but both are sensational beings. Okay. The divisions are so because all these things merge one into the other. So this gradation is very, 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 very valuable. First you have the physical, then you have the vital, and then you have the mind. But all these are interacting with each other. So first you have the pure physical, then you have the physical vital, and then there is a vital physical. Then you go to the mind level, there is a physical mind, and there is a mental physical. That also is there. So, and then you come to the vital mind and the mental vital. All these are all different things. So gradual is a gradation. Okay, so in all these, the ego operates in all these ways. Okay, in the life, mind, and the sensational being, in the very body consciousness, even the body consciousness, the body feels is said to be separate from others. Huh? So, if somebody else is suffering, you don't suffer. There's a difference between the other body and your body. So there also the ego is a physical ego, vital ego, mental ego. Wrong will engenders wrong action of all these instruments. Which instruments? Physical, vital, mental. So in all these, there can be wrong action physically, there can be wrong emotions in the vital, and there can be wrong thoughts in the mind. Because of the ego, a multiple error and many branching crookedness of thought and will and sense and feeling. Note carefully, he is beginning from thought and will coming down to the vital and sense and feeling. So everything right down to the physical, there can be wrong actions and wrong everything because you are starting from inconscience and ego is the problem. Nor can we deal rightly with others so long as they are to us others. Okay, that's. As soon as you consider them to be other than yourself, then your action cannot be the right one. Even those who are closest to you, okay, even those who are closest to you, family members or your people whom you love, it can never be perfect because you feel themselves to be separate. Beings who are strangers to ourselves and of whose inner consciousness, soul need, mind need, heart need, life need, body need, we know little or nothing at all. So there are so many differences. He's going into great detail to explain to us. A stranger, one who is separate from us, he has got so many needs and we don't know any of them. We don't know his soul need, what his soul needs. We don't know what his mind needs. We don't even know what his heart needs, life need. Heart need is a higher vital, life need is a lower vital. Body need, we don't know. We know little or nothing. The modicum, now this is very interesting. The modicum of imperfect sympathy, knowledge and goodwill that the law, need and habit of association engender is a poor quantum of what is required for a true action. So even with your best goodwill, your action towards one for whom you have sympathy can never be the perfect action. Ego is always there. Ego is the, as you say in another place, the ego is the warp and woof. It's like a cloth which is stitched this way and that way. The threads are going vertically and horizontally. The ego is woven into the whole structure of our being. It's up and down. Everywhere the ego is there. It is absolutely mixed completely. the sense of separation. So even with sympathy saying, it can, you cannot solve the problem. The modicum of imperfect sympathy, all our sympathy is always imperfect. Knowledge and goodwill that the law, need and habit of association engender. When you want to have association, there's apparently there is a bit of sympathy, there is also knowledge and a goodwill. But that doesn't last too long. Okay? We know that when you make an association, the association breaks up very easily. We know that. Everyone tries to have this association. The merchants in a city will make an association. The workers in a factory will make an association, a union. But these things don't last. Okay, that's the whole problem. They are imperfect. A larger mind, a larger heart, a more ample and generous life force can do something to help us or help others and avoid the worst offenses. But this too is insufficient and will not prevent a mass of troubles and harms and collisions of our preferred good with the good of others. Our preferred good, what we think is good for us, may not always be good for others. Okay? There can be a collision between your idea of good and the idea of good of others. By the very nature of our ego and ignorance, we affirm ourselves egoistically even when we most pride ourselves on selflessness, and ignorantly, even when we most pride ourselves on understanding and knowledge. You may think that you are very understanding, but still the ego is always there. Even when you think that you are the most selfless, still there is this, it's a very interesting point. When you help others, you are doing something good. There is no doubt about it. But ego has not disappeared. You praise yourself that I have done something good. Okay? And it's so subtle. Okay? Even when we know very well what happened. Now. One man came and he gave money to mother and said, I want a boarding to be made, but my name should be there on the nameplate at the gate. Okay? So obviously he's doing good by giving money, but he is demanding openly he is demanding his name to be put. Ego. Okay? But now somebody else says that that's egoistic. So he'll say, okay, I don't want the nameplate also. I'll do good to others, I'll give charity to others without anyone coming to know. But then what happens? Has the ego gone? No. Because you praise yourself and say, look, I'm doing good and I'm making sure that nobody else comes to know about it. Okay? So you praise yourself even more. So how subtle the ego is, this is problem. You cannot get rid of it even by doing good. Okay? That's what he's saying. Altruism or altruism, whatever it is, taken as a rule of life, does not deliver us. Deliver us from what? Our egoistic actions. It's a potent instrument for self-enlargement and for correction of the narrower ego, no doubt. Okay, philanthropy, altruism, charity, this is good at a lower level, not spiritual level. At spiritual level, it has no value because the ego is there. Okay? But it does not abolish it, nor transform it into the true self, one with all. The true self will be one with all in consciousness. The ego of the altruist is as powerful and absorbing as the ego of the selfish. And it is often more powerful and insistent because it's a self-righteous and magnified ego. There you are very clear. When you are helping others also, you take full credit for it. So your ego increases even more. Okay. Someone who is not doing anything, his ego is a little dormant perhaps, but when you are doing good for others, you take even more credit. Okay, so self-righteous and magnified ego. It helps still less if we do wrong to our soul. Now, a very interesting side issue he is dealing with. Okay, it helps us still less if we do wrong to our soul, to our mind, life, and body, with the idea of subordinating ourselves to the self of others. I'm so generous that I don't care if I have to suffer, but I will give away everything I have. And even if I have I feel a want. I give away all my money, and if I don't have money, I will suffer. But I don't mind. Let the others benefit from my benevolence and my charity. Let others. So Swami is saying it does not help at all because you are doing wrong to your soul. Okay. To affirm our being rightly, so that it may become one with all, is a true principle, not to mutilate or immolate it. So you must keep in mind also that you must not harm yourself. If you harm yourself by over charity and over benevolence, that doesn't help. It doesn't help you. You won't grow. You have to make sure that there is growth. And how to do that? You have to affirm your being. Okay, you have to say, you have to give sufficient. There should be a balance between the giving and your own importance. Okay, that is, and your own development. There has to be a balance between the two. To affirm our being rightly, so that it may become one with all, is a true principle, not to mutilate or immolate. When you do that, and you say that the ego becomes even more, no? Because I am giving so much that I have nothing left with me. That also is, you are harming yourself. That's what Sri is pointing out. So, self-immolation to destroy oneself may be necessary at times, okay, exceptionally for a cause, okay, in answer to some demand of the heart or for some right or high purpose, but cannot be made the rule and the nature of life. So, for instance, you don't mind dying for your country, okay, that's fine. Or there are many cases also when you have a mother whose kidney is failing, the child says, okay, I'll give you one kidney of mine. But then you are harming yourself to a certain extent. Not always in all cases, but you can harm yourself. So this is what we're saying. You have to find a balance, right? Balance between the two. Self-immolation may be necessary at times, particularly in war. You don't mind sacrificing yourself. Exceptionally for a cause, in answer to some demand of the heart or for some right or high purpose, but cannot be made the rule or nature of life. So exaggerating your own humility and your self-effacement, you exaggerated, it will only feed and exaggerate the ego of others or magnify some collective ego, not lead us, or ego of others, or magnify some collective ego, not lead us not lead us or mankind to the discovery and affirmation of our or its true being. Okay, so you have to find a balance. You cannot exaggerate your own self-effacement. That's what he said. Okay, so magnify some collective ego. So when you are doing that, then the others also can take advantage of you. That also you should be careful about. Okay, it does not. The ego does not disappear. Within yourself also and also for others. It encourages them. Sacrifice and self-giving are indeed a true principle and a spiritual necessity. Okay? For we cannot affirm our being rightly without sacrifice or without self-giving. Okay? That is essential. But you have to find exactly the right way of doing it. Okay? Spiritual necessity. For we cannot affirm our being rightly without sacrifice or without self-giving to something larger than our ego. But that too must be done with the right consciousness and will founded on a true knowledge. When you don't have the knowledge, naturally your sacrifice also will not be the right one. To develop the sattvic part of our nature, a nature of light, understanding, balance, harmony, sympathy, goodwill, kindness, fellow feeling, self-control, rightly ordered and harmonized action, is the best we can do in the limits of the mental formation. But it is a stage and not the goal of our growth of being. So it's good to do that, but it's not spiritually, it will not deliver you from your ego. That's what it is. These are solutions, by the way, palliatives. Palliatives, temporary relief of suffering. Palliative, it's a temporary solution. Okay. Necessary means, okay, palliatives, necessary means a partial dealing with this root difficulty. Which is the root difficulty? Ego. Provisional standards and devices given us as a temporary help and guidance, because a true and total solution is beyond our present capacity and can only come when we have sufficiently evolved to see it and make it our main endeavor. So, in other words, charity, philanthropy, altruism, morality, all these things are good. There is no problem about it. But do not solve the problem of egoism or the problem of evil and falsehood in the physical world. Error. It will always be there. So, what's the true solution? Next para. Okay. So, naturally, the next solution is egolessness. And when can you get egolessness? When you go out of your body, mind, life, you get rid of your identification with body, mind, and life and go to the second level, the spiritual planes of consciousness. There the ego disappears, mostly disappears. Sometimes you can come back as an instrumental ego, but that's another question. Maybe he'll deal with that also. He has dealt with it elsewhere, but here whether he will deal with it or not, we'll see. Okay. Now we can read the next one. The true solution can intervene only. So, who will read? Jasmine, maybe you can read. You have not read for a long time if you have the text.
No, life divine, I don't have.
Okay, then Archana ji has to read. Okay.
Okay, Rangada.
Go ahead.
The true solution can intervene only when, by our spiritual growth, we can become oneself with all beings, know them as part of ourselves, deal with them as if they were our other selves. For then the division is healed, the law of separate self-affirmation, leading by itself to affirmation against or at the expense of others, is enlarged and liberated by adding to it the law of our self-affirmation for others and our self-finding in their self-finding and self-realization. It has been made a rule of religious ethics to act in a spirit of universal compassion, to love one's neighbor as oneself, to do to others as one would have them do to us, to feel the joy and grief of others as one's own. But no man, but no man living in his ego is able truly and perfectly to do these things. He can only accept them as a demand of his mind, an aspiration of his heart, an effort of his will to live by a high standard and modify by a sincere endeavor his crude ego nature. It is when others are known and felt intimately as oneself that this ideal can become a natural and spontaneous rule of our living and be realized in practice as in principle. But even oneness with others is not enough by itself. It is a oneness with their ignorance. For then the law of ignorance will work, and error of action and wrong action will survive even if diminished in degree and mellowed in incidence and character. Our oneness with others must be fundamental, not a oneness with their minds, hearts, vital selves, egos, even though these come to be included in our universalized consciousness, but a oneness in the soul and spirit. And that can only come by a liberation into soul awareness and self knowledge. To be ourselves liberated from ego and realize our true selves is the first necessity. All else can be achieved as a luminous result, a necessary consequence. That is one reason why a spiritual call must be accepted as imperative and take precedence over all other claims, intellectual, ethical, social, that belong to the domain of the ignorance. For the mental law of good abides in that domain and can only modify and palliate. Nothing can be a sufficient substitute for the spiritual change that can realize the true and integral good because through the spirit we come to the root of action and existence.
A very interesting para. He's saying that last bit that is there, the rest of it is quite easy, we have understood, but the last bit, that is one reason why a spiritual call must be accepted as imperative. Okay. There are, you have the gradation of the collectivity goes like this. First you have the individual, then you have your family, then you have a clan, then you have a community, okay, then you have the nation, and finally you have the humanity. So there is a gradation. Sometimes you have to sacrifice yourself for your family. That many cases are there when the elder person in the family sacrifices their own education and works so that the others can benefit in the family. Particularly in poor families, this can happen. Okay, so you sacrifice yourself. It can happen. Okay, but if there's a higher call, okay, then that higher call has to be obeyed. For instance, if the community needs something, the society needs something, then you may have to sacrifice your family need. Okay. Then there is the spiritual need. If the spiritual need comes, then even your family needs and the community and even national need not be obeyed. Okay. So that is what Sri is saying. This is exactly what happened in Sri case also. Okay, he has made it very clear. He has given instances also. See, Buddha had a family and he had a newborn child. But when the spiritual call came, he had to give up his family and go away. So somebody who doesn't understand this principle will say, what? He has abandoned his family. But you are abandoning your family not for a lower cause, but for a higher cause. If you abandon your family for a lower cause, certainly you are in the wrong. But if you abandon it for a higher cause, then there is no wrong in it. Okay? That's exactly what Sri pointing out. See, he discussed this question elsewhere also. So, there are many who say that Sri Aurobindo gave up the family and Mrinalini, his wife, young wife, was left stranded. But he explains to her afterwards that how his values have changed and that he is working for something. He is working, when God calls you, you have to obey that call. Okay. So that's what he's saying here in this last one. That is one reason why a spiritual call must be accepted as imperative, absolutely unavoidable, and take precedence over all other claims, whether they are intellectual, ethical, social, that belong to the domain of the ignorance. For the mental law of good abides in that domain. The mental law of good abides in the domain of ignorance, okay, and can only modify and palliate. It doesn't solve the problem. Nothing can be a sufficient substitute for the spiritual change that can realize the true and integral good, because through the spirit we come to the root of action and existence. So that's what he's saying in the para. Okay, so he explained to us how the ego is the root cause of all and how to remove that root cause? Only by removing your sense of separation and going to the higher level. And the ego can disappear only when you go to the higher level. So, higher level of the spiritual plane of consciousness. The ego largely disappears. Okay, so that's what basically he's saying in this para. We can go to the next para. We have 10 minutes, so we can go to the next para. What is the para? My computer keeps on jumping, so we have to read now. The true solution can intervene, or we read that just now. So this is the next para.
We read Archana Ji. The true solution
read it.
Archana Ji has just read.
Yes, yes.
We have to read now
The
the
true
true solution.
Next.
Archana Di has read. No?
Yeah. Okay, she read that, no? So we have to
Yes, yes.
go to the next para.
Yes, shall I read?
Yes, please.
In the spiritual knowledge of self, there are 3 steps of its self-achievement, which are at the same time 3 parts of the one knowledge. The first is the discovery of the soul, not the outer soul of thought and emotion and desire, but the secret psychic entity, the divine element within us. When that becomes dominant over the nature, when we are consciously the soul, and when mind, life, and body take their true place as its instruments, we are aware of a guide within that knows the truth, the good, the true delight and beauty of existence, controls the heart and intellect by its luminous law, and leads our life and being towards spiritual completeness. Even within the obscure working of ignorance, we have then a witness who discerns, a living light that illumines, a will that rescues to be that refuses to be misled and separates the mind's truth from its error. The heart's intimate response from its vibrations to the wrong call and wrong demand upon it, the life's true ardor and plenitude of movement from vital passion, and the turbid falsehoods of our vital nature and its dark self-seekings. This is the first step of self-realization, to enthrone the soul, the divine psychic individual, in the place of the ego. The next step is to become aware of the eternal self in us, unborn and one with the self of all beings. This self-realization liberates and universalizes. Even if our action still proceeds in the dynamics of the ignorance, it no longer binds or misleads, because our inner being is seated in the light of self-knowledge. The third step is to know the divine being, who is at once our supreme transcendent self, the cosmic being, foundation of our universality, and the divinity within, of which our psychic being, the true evolving individual in our nature, is a portion, a spark, a flame growing into the eternal fire, from which it was lit, and of which it is the witness ever living within us, and the conscious instrument of its light and power and joy and beauty. Aware of the divine as the master of our being and action, we can learn to become channels of his Shakti, the divine puissance, and act according to her dictates or her rule of light and power within us. Our action will not then be mastered by our vital impulse or governed by a mental standard, for she acts according to the permanent yet plastic truth of things, not that which the mind constructs, but the higher, deeper, and subtler truth of each movement and circumstance as it is known to the supreme knowledge and demanded by the supreme will in the universe. The liberation of the will follows upon the liberation in knowledge and is its dynamic consequence. It is knowledge that purifies, it is truth that liberates. Evil is the fruit of a spiritual ignorance, and it will disappear only by the growth of a spiritual consciousness and the light of spiritual knowledge. The division of our being from the being of others can only be healed by removing the divorce of our nature from the inner soul reality, by abolishing the veil between our becoming and our self-being, by bridging the remoteness of our individuality in nature from the divine being, who is the omnipresent reality in nature and above nature.
Okay. So, 1 second. I've lost my page as usual. I'll get it back. Okay. But basically, what he's saying is here, okay, the true solution can come in when you cross all the 3 stages. Okay? So there's a psychic transformation, then there's a spiritual transformation, and then finally there's the transcendental transformation or the supramental transformation. So if these three are done, then the solution can come, not otherwise. Okay, that's what you say. So 1 second. Yes, sir. This is the last chapter of the section, and also the paragraph also. Okay. The last paragraph, there's one more paragraph.
The
That's right.
paragraph is the second last paragraph.
That's right. So what he's saying, I've got it now. So, in the spiritual knowledge, no? That's where we have to read today. Verse 1.
Yes.
Just 1 second. Yeah. In the spiritual knowledge of self, there are 3 steps of its self-achievement. So, not normal knowledge, but spiritual knowledge, there are 3 steps. The first step is I'm going rapidly through, we have already about only 4 minutes. The first is the discovery of the soul. Okay? Not the outer soul of thought, what he calls the desire soul, but he calls the psychic being. The first is his discovery of the psychic being. The psychic being puts you on the right track. Okay? But you are still in the ignorance. Even the discovery of the psychic being does not deliver you to the second level, but it can correct all the errors in the nature. It corrects and orients you towards the divine. Okay? Like he says in the synthesis, it's like the sunflower. That is constantly, it is turned to the sun. The sunflower is always turned. So the psychic being does that. The psychic being takes you away from the outer world and orients you towards the divine. The first is the discovery of the soul, not the outer soul of thought and emotion and desire, but the secret psychic entity, the divine element within us. When that becomes dominant in over our nature, when we are consciously the soul, and when mind, life, and body take their true place as its instruments, we are aware of a guide within that knows the truth, the good, the true delight and beauty of existence, controls heart and intellect, controls lost the page again. When it becomes dominant over the nature, conscious soul and mind and life, we are aware of a guide which knows the truth, the delight, and controls heart and intellect by its luminous law and leads our life and being towards spiritual completeness. This is the first one. Then, even within the obscure workings of the ignorance, we have then a witness who discerns living light that illumines. So even the psychic can make you see yourself objectively. Okay, that's what he's saying. The witness who this is not the witness of the spiritual plane, but the witness of the psychic. Okay, who discerns a living light that illumines, a will that refuses to be misled and separates the mind's truth from its error, the heart's intimate response from the vibrations to a wrong call and wrong demand upon it, the life's true order, okay, and plenitude of movement from vital passion and the turbid falsehood of our vital nature and dark seeking. He's giving great detail. He's telling you what happens when the psyche comes forward. Okay, so this is the first step of self-realization, to enthrone the soul, the divine psychic individual, in the place of the ego. The second step, the next step, is to become aware of the eternal self in us, unborn and one with the self of all beings. There is the second level, the level of the spiritual plane of consciousness. Your consciousness of soul comes out, separates itself from body, mind, life, and enters into the spiritual planes. Okay, then you know that your self is the self of all. Okay? And it is unborn. The psyche comes down to the physical world, but the self does not come down to this physical world. It stands above, okay, and also guides you. So this is the second one. Okay, it makes you can have the cosmic consciousness also there. This self-realization liberates and universalizes, liberates the consciousness from the body, mind, life, and universalizes it. You can begin the cosmic consciousness. Even if our action still proceeds in the dynamics of the ignorance, it no longer binds or misleads because our inner being is seated in the light of self-knowledge. So this is the normal thing, that your body-mind life will continue to do its wrong actions or whatever, but your self is seated outside the body-mind life. There is a witness consciousness, the Brahman consciousness. But that also is not enough to cure the problems of the physical world. Your action will still continue to be wrong in the body-mind life. The third step is to know the divine being who is at once. Now, simply using the word divine being. That means the personal aspect of the divine. In the second level, in the self, the personal aspect is not there. It's only the impersonal aspect of the divine that you come to know. But in the third one, the divine being, very clear, the personal aspect of the divine, who is at once our supreme transcendent self, the cosmic being, foundation of the universality, and the divinity within. So when you go to the third level, the supramental, you are aware of the divine transcendentally, universally, and even individually within yourself. Okay, that's what he's saying. So that is the complete transformation that is required. That's what he's saying in the paragraph. Okay, it's 8:41. We'll have to stop here. Next time, next Wednesday, we can go to the next para. That is, but this last division to be removed. We'll read from there. Okay.
And this is the last paragraph of this book, Rangadan.
Yeah, that's right. And now
We'll be starting the second part.
that's right. Evolution. Okay.
Yeah.
Until now, he has been dealing with all the details of the evolution in the lower nature. Now we will go to the, yeah, that's right. Last one. And it's the end of book 2, part 1. Okay. So then we go to book 2, part 2. And what is that? The two facsimiles, which is very interesting, how Surendra is to correct the knowledge and the spiritual ignorance. This is part 2. This is the last part. And it's a lot of discussion, very interesting, ending with the final is a evolution of the spiritual, the supramental evolution, last chapter, the divine life. Okay, so we stop here today, and next time we'll finish the last paragraph. The last paragraph beginning with, but the last division, that's right. Is the last division and the last paragraph also of the, and the last chapter of the section. Okay. So,
Merci
what
beaucoup.
everybody, have a nice day.